I'm new here
Welcome,
today.
everyone. Today we have our author, Julie. How are you doing, Julie?
Good morning.
Yeah,
I
so
am doing much better than the last time we spoke. I think I might
yeah,
finally be done with the flu.
yeah, I think that bug was just going around everywhere. So first of all, we're going to start it off. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your journey as an author?
An author's an interesting question. I was a math geek. I don't think Kim knows this. I was a math geek. I didn't think I could write. And when I was in school, if you were good at math and science, you got tracked in math and science. And if you were good at writing, you got tracked with those folks. And so I didn't really think I could write. And I don't write well on the first draft, and I don't write in order. And so computers saved my life on that one. And now I write a lot, a lot. And I've had the privilege of actually working with students who may not think they can write on telling good stories, but it was a
Yeah,
big journey getting
yeah, I
good
mean,
at it.
yeah, it's amazing. I think we've gone through a major journey, right? From having no computers and then the whole design, the education design that changed where they put us into little boxes where before they didn't. And there was this whole thing, right? And that happened in the workforce as well, where I was able to do
Mhm.
everything in the workforce. And then all of a sudden they started to put these boxes around positions. That being said, what inspired you to write your story in The Revitalize for the Soul?
So, and I would be excited for readers to see our interview and then read it. I think professionally, I kind of have my crap together all the time. And I look like I've always had it together. And part of my job is to do that, right? I lead other people. I teach, I'm an example. And part of being an example is also being real. And if I think about as an adult, a point at which I felt terrible about myself and turned it around, those were the moments. And at the end of the day, we all have them. I sort of joke in the piece about art imitating life. But most of us have seen some poor woman on the floor of her shower in some movie about some terrible thing. I'd never done that before. I thought it was like dramatic makeup, and there I was sitting on the floor, and I couldn't get up.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
really just plain couldn't. And if I could have slid down the drain, I'd have done that too. And yet, all the other things are still true. All the things I was doing in the world were still happening, and I was still making a difference. And I think that's sort of Um, and I also wish, so that's one part. The other part, I think, is that one of the lessons for me was that most of us tolerate being mildly miserable a lot. And it isn't until the pain is really bad that we take a look and make change.
Hmm.
And the truth is, we don't have to sit on the floor of the shower.
Yeah.
Maybe we can take the risks a little earlier.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time in my life, I've written many books since I started my first published book in 2007, but I've published articles for university research, right, for
Yeah.
since the
Yep.
90s. And I remember this whole thought process around what do I tell the world and what do I not? And I remember you trying to figure out what are you going to write? And so was there a defining moment or event that sparked your idea? Because it took a bit to figure out, am I going to tell it or not? I think that was really what's going on in your world, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think that was part of it. I have had a big dramatic life, so I had lots of things to choose from.
Hmm.
I'm a leader in my community. I think, the hope is lots of people are going to read this and people who could never imagine me in that spot will read this.
Hmm.
And I think it's hard to be vulnerable sometimes. It's actually easy for me to be vulnerable on a stage in another state, but come home to my town, where I lead a couple of organizations here, it's different. And so, was I going to tell the biggest story? Or I got eight others that aren't quite as powerful, but they'd be good enough,
Hmm.
right? So you're right. I think part of it was I going to tell this story? And then, as I looked at the book and our colleagues and what they were writing, for me, part of it was what could I add to that? I teach leadership. I've got lots of stuff up my sleeve. What could I add that would be different and move people?
Yeah. So, how coming into the writing itself, how did you develop the characters or the storyline? And did any of the part of the book, the chapter that you wrote surprise you as you wrote it? Because, as we write, we change or transform typically.
Or something, we find out things that we weren't acknowledging yet. Sometimes when we write, the what we say is a little different than what we thought in our heads before we started typing or writing. I
Right.
think, you and I've been through a lot of similar trainings. I know to start in the middle. Um, which middle, right? So I think that was part of it. And then what was gonna, how do I knew the end. I said earlier that I don't write in order. I knew the point I wanted to make. Like I knew the end before I knew the beginning. And so what was going to get me there? But I also think when I was sitting on the floor of the shower, I thought I was this big. I thought everything I had done in the world was summed up in me sitting on the floor of the shower. And I think writing it sort of solidified my knowledge that no, that was that day. And I have news for everybody. Everybody you admire has had a day like that. They may not sit on the floor of the shower. They may bash in a wall. They may run so far they don't have the energy to run home. Everybody has days like that. And I think it's 20 years ago for me. It put it in a different perspective, I think.
Yeah. So what challenges did you face when you were writing, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Some with help from you. I have a tendency to skip over some things. I tend to be more of an abstract thinker. So even when I write instructions, I need somebody to read them and say, so, okay, I understand one, two, three. How'd you get to five? Are there more steps in there? So there were things that I had kind of missed. Um, I think for somebody who is as has as big a personality and is as emotional as I am, my writing usually isn't. Most of what I write is technical, even when it's not, right? I write speeches to tell stories, but I don't write stories mostly. I try to find stories to include while I'm talking about the results of some program. And so being comfortable writing in that more emotional place was, I think, a challenge as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because a lot of and I always intentionally write, like I say, okay, I'm gonna focus in on my spirituality or something like that, like some kind of story. And then the stories come from that, but it's really for me, I know that I'm gonna dive deeper into learning more about myself in that process. So I've been very intentional about that lately in my writing. But how do you handle feedback or criticism about your work?
Much better than I used to. I I love Elizabeth Gilbert's first TED Talk. She had just finished, she'd written Eat, Pray, Love, which surprised her and everybody else by being as big as it was. And what she talks about is if you believe it's you, then how do you write the next book? Because it's probably not going to be as big. If you like, how do you replicate that? If you see it as something coming through you, that the ideas are out there and you happen to have them in this moment, it becomes easier. It also means I'm less attached to how I put it out there. So I try to remember that it's through me, not of me, which makes it a whole lot easier to see, I don't know what you meant here. Did you really mean this? And not go, well, they don't know, not go into that place because no, it's if it wasn't clear to you, it's not going to be clear to anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of feedback, we're looking for, when you do buy the Kindle, which is right now, we have it as a reduced price for 99 cents. I'd encourage you to just go out and write a review because Julie's truth is going to be something that might impact you, or it might be her truth alone. And we want to hear that feedback out on Amazon. So go to Amazon, take some time after you read it and make a note of that so that we can get more people, more readers to experience these wonderful stories like Julie's and other authors that we're interviewing today. So Julie, how was writing your chapter in Revitalize for the Soul? How has it changed you or influenced you personally?
I want to answer that, but I kind of want to respond to what you just said, if that's okay.
Sure.
As potential readers, Kim got us all together. We all met each other. We all heard parts of each other's stories. And we were all changed from those conversations. There are books that there are things I write because I need to report out something. I expect that every author that Kim interviews wants your life to change, wants you to learn the lessons we maybe had to learn the hard way. And so it's important to me that we share it and we write reviews so other people get it, because that's why we all wrote it. Now, did we get something out of it? Absolutely, which is, I think, the question that you just asked if I haven't lost it. Which is, yeah, I think, again, I think I got to look back and maybe think about, did I need to alter how I saw the me that was in that shower? It was also kind of fun. When you're living through crazy, you just do the next thing, and then you do the next thing, and then you do the next thing, and you don't always stop to look back. I mean, one way to describe that year, and I think I state this in the chapters, it's the year I hired 5 lawyers. Well, you don't hire lawyers when there's not a mess. But you know what? All of those messes are good. Got to
Mhm.
the other side of them.
I'm glad you look at it that
Right?
way.
Right? Like when I was like, oh my God, and I can't use this person for that, and I have to and I have to do what? And it just keeps coming, and you're like drinking the ocean through a straw. It's hard to, you don't always stop and turn around and go, oh, and I got through all those things, and I got through them in relatively short time, and my life is pretty good now because I did that.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think we don't stop it. And so it was interesting to kind of list out, what did I get done in that year and a half? Man, it was painful, but I was already
Yeah.
in pain.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was really fun to bring everyone together too, because some people wanted more structure, some people didn't. Some people needed the space to just, percolate, but actually get some framework around it. And some people wanted to learn how to publish their own books and what is the process. So I had a little training, a 7-week training on that. Some people participated and some not. And that was the cool thing about it is everyone could take what worked for them. And we're going to be doing another one of these next year, but we're going to kick it off after the summit, bringing on more new authors to do the next volume too. So look for that coming up. So Julie, what advice would you give to aspiring authors or those considering to write their first book?
It's kind of advice I give people about a lot of things. I think it's really, um, we have this glorified notion of what it means to be an author, and most of us don't fit whatever that notion is, even those of us who have written, right? And so I like, stop waiting. You don't need to wait till the kids are grown. You don't need to wait till you know what the end is. You don't need to know, you don't need to be a certain age. You don't need to retire. You don't need to earn a certain amount of money. Get up in the morning and write.
Yeah, I mean that's key, right? Because I wrote my first book in 2007, which is a kid's book, and I had this whole preconceived notion of what that was. And But what I did was I actually put the process in place daily where I would write, and then I took that whole year off when I paused from my technology, right? And I was able to
Yeah.
accumulate so much that in the last couple of years, I have the framework to publish, and people are amazed, right? They go, how do you publish these books? Well, I've written so much that I've been able to take a lot of what I've written and I keep doing the writing while I'm doing this, and it's only 15 minutes a day for me that you can get the creative process. And I love that you shared earlier that it isn't it's messy. You didn't say it like that, but it isn't that it is a continuous process like math, where you do this first to get the answer, then you do the next answer and the next, which I love math too, by the way. I was a genius in math.
Yes.
Yeah, just natural for me, right? I loved it. But I also like to write as well. So that creative process is so different. And it is about just putting what's on your mind down. And that it's a healing process too, right? It's a big deal. And that's wonderful advice that you share. Yeah.
Well, and if you can get yourself into the practice, and I fall in and out of the practice depending on how, like, let's be honest here. I'd love to tell you I'm consistent every day of every year. There are years that have been crazy and I haven't. But even some of the things you write that you have no idea what you're ever going to do with, it's just part of the discipline. I did a project 7 years ago. where it was a writing weekend and we wrote for 90 minutes, met for 30, took a break for 15, back at it for 12 hours a day, 3 days in a row.
Mhm.
And because I'm working on a book, I went back to that 8,000 words or so that I had written over that weekend and was mining it. And I really, one of the things that I saw was I had described an experience that I hoped would happen in my life that has. And it was this moment, I was like, I wrote that 7 years ago.
Wow.
I didn't even remember that I'd ever written it. And so we pull things out of ourselves that we just wouldn't if we didn't. So even if the intent isn't to publish something, it's a different way into your thoughts. It's worth your time.
Yeah, I mean, and I call that manifestation, but I do this all the time where I'm writing a letter to myself as if I'm in the shoes
Hmm.
5 years, 1 year, 1 month from where I am, and I look back and I tell myself something. And that is, it's a form of manifestation. Everyone does it different ways. There's more of a
Yep.
woo-woo way, right? There's more of a tactical way. I'm more tactical. But I get things done. But you'd be amazed as we connect with our consciousness, our connection with us, who we are, we can see so much. You know, I predicted 10 years ago where we are today, how we were going to be. I saw it, right? Because I was very aware of it. I did a lot of meditation. And I think that going on a retreat like you did is you become more connected because you have the time to write and get connected to yourself. And I think writing does that.
Yep. Unless anybody wa is watching is thinking about this, I also did incredibly detailed descriptions of the chair I was sitting in because I was supposed to be writing, right? Like I wasn't always connected to source. But it was like, it's a chair, it's green, it has arms, it's cuddly, my feet touch the floor. Like apropos of nothing, just to keep writing. So,
Right.
so it is not, it is messy and it isn't, it, it just is.
Do it messy, right? So is there a final message that you'd like to share with our readers, our audiences?
I probably already did, but we have lots of ideas about how many lives we get. We only know about one, this one. And spending it miserable is not the right way to spend it. You get one life, make it one you love and are proud of. And if it's scary, do it scared.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I love that advice because I think it is all about a choice. You can choose to sit in I always call it the black hole, or
Mhm.
you can choose to, just step out of it. And it's not a big step. It could be little steps to get out of it, right?
You might
It's
have
a
to color
choice.
the walls first,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for being a part of this book and for taking your time today. And yeah, any other final goodbyes and how people can connect with you?
Uh, my website is ileadstrategies.com and you can find me there pretty easily. So you don't have to spell my crazy last name. It's just ileadstrategies.com. And I would love to hear from you. I'd love it in a review. If you don't want to write a review, I would love to hear what resonates. And if something doesn't resonate, because that's something I can also respond to. So, and I think all of us in this book really do want to engage.
Yeah.
So I say that not just for me, but for all of us.
All right, there you have it. All right, everyone. The book is out on Amazon. Go and download it and read it and give us a review. And thank you so much, Julie, for your time.
Thank you.